Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, and we're inching closer and closer to the NFC Championship game Sunday, 3 o'clock at the Link, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders, or as Adam Caplan likes to call them, the Commandos, which is funny. We have a Patreon member who's now been calling them the Commandos too. So Adam, you are a trailblazer. You're starting a trend, and maybe the whole world will start to call them the Commandos, and we'll get a big joke out of it.
I have never liked that name. I don't know what it is. I just corny. Sorry, Washington football team fans. Yeah. I actually like WFT better because we can make fun of that. But anyway, this is great, man. And you know it's cool. We'll talk later. We'll talk in this broadcast about the weather later on, but we're not going to get snow. I promise you that. Not happening.
It's funny to hear Greg Cosell on Inside Tape. He doesn't, and this doesn't surprise me at all, but Greg hates games that are played in the elements. Most people love them. Greg doesn't because he feels like you don't get a good evaluation because players slip and fall. And obviously he noted the offensive lines both had trouble at times getting their footing. That's why you saw some breakdowns in pass pro on both teams, and the quarterbacks get hit a lot. But you're right. This game, you do want for an NFC Championship game, you want nice, good weather for your own team. You know, you're at home. You want your fans to be able to enjoy it. So I like the fact that the sky, it'll be cold, but it's not going to be too crazy with any precipitation. At least it's not expected to be.
No, there's no precip at all in the forecast. Right. We'll talk about the weather later, but look, I love it. You were there too. You and I were there in 2013 when the snow came out of nowhere against Detroit. That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen because it's just funny to hear the players and coaches talk after the game. Are like, well, we weren't prepared for this because it wasn't in the forecast.
Yeah.
So barring that happening, we're not getting any bad weather.
All right. So good stuff on there. In this podcast, we've got some injuries to talk about, some concerns now for the Eagles beyond what we talked about in our last podcast. We have some transactions that are interesting in nature. And then have the Eagles finally ran into a team that's actually healthier than them. All year long, the Eagles have seemingly been the more healthy team. However, we'll take a look at the Washington Commanders or Commandos and get into their health situation going into this game. You know, one of the things I just wanted to quickly say that I feel really privileged to be able to do alongside you, Adam, is to do something that's like really rewarding and enriching. And certainly talking sports doesn't have to be that, but the way in which we do it, I really enjoy. I know some people, listen, we've all been in jobs that we hated, but we had to make money, put food on the table and do things. And some people like their job, but they may not necessarily feel like some ownership because of it. They may just feel like they go to work and they do their job. But what we have done on Patreon and being able to connect our great members with people like John DiFilippo or Greg Cosell or Jason Avant or Dan Klecko, I don't know that anybody else is doing that, you know, from a media platform standpoint, as far as giving people engagement and interaction. And we just moderate, we say, ask away. And now we've had John on so many times, and his last one with us was great. Just the stories about the Philly special and practice leading up to the NFC Championship game and certain things that, you know, stay there because those are members and they pay for it, right? Just to be able to connect people that we know in the industry with fans who are members and have them. John is starting to recognize some of our members, and they're talking to each other by name. And I find that really rewarding. I know I sound like a salesman here. I'm not trying to. I'm not, you know, of course I want everybody to sign up and enjoy the perks, and it helps us from a business standpoint, but just from a pride in your job type thing, I don't think anybody else is doing what we're doing as far as giving people engagement, interaction with people who have a stature of a Super Bowl champion head quarterbacks coach, who's also been an NFL offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I guess John said 3 times. I forgot because it's funny. He actually coached Cam Irving, who's a new Eagles offensive lineman on the practice squad in 2015. I totally forgot about that. That was Cam Irving's rookie season. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, I got to tell you, that was incredible. It was that Wednesday night. He gave us nearly an hour. In fact, he joked. He goes, "Guys, I could go on another hour." We didn't want to do that to him. But he's a special guy. He's his ability to connect with people is something that I've not seen with any former or current NFL coach. And John already promised if he's not back in the NFL within the next 2 weeks and the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, he's coming back on, which is ridiculous. But he said he'd do it. I was like, almost, you could have pushed me over when he said that.
I know, it was great. It was great. And listen, we're rooting for him to get a job. So hopefully
we are. Yeah, we are for sure.
He deserves one. It would be great to see him back. But obviously, if he doesn't and he's with us, that's great for our members, and it's great for our listenership and our viewership. And it's been a great week on Inside the Birds, as it continues to be. You know, the Jeremiah Trotter interview with Derek Gunn was really good. So I encourage everybody to check it out. It wasn't just about his son being on the team. I mean, Jeremiah went through the entire team. He's seen every game. He flew in for the divisional round game against the Rams. He's been working in the Dominican Republic on building houses there. So he told a story about that. So that was great. Q&A did a fantastic job, and we really appreciate Quentin because he was under the weather this week, and he kind of soldiered through a day later to get it done, and they were fantastic. Andrew DeCecco has been doing extra podcasts called the DeCecco Daily. That, you know, there was one out yesterday, there's one out today. So everything's been, you know, from my mom always uses this term, from soup to nuts. Everything is covered, and we're just trying to, you know, attack this thing at every single angle we can. So it's been fun.
By the way, we had 24 pieces of audio or shows last week, which is a company high in 7 seasons. It's crazy what we're doing, but we're giving it all to you, whether you're a Patreon member. In fact, we want to thank the Patreon members who, boy, did we get a lot of signups, particularly for our Tier 3. Tim, who just signed up on Thursday. K-Dub, who signed up the day before. Ryan, I know, we talked to Ryan the other day. I think he upgraded. This is funny. I love this one. This guy, I don't know what his first name is. I'd thank him for that, but he calls himself BG55, obviously, Brandon Graham.
Oh, my gosh, Brandon Graham signed up. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. I couldn't tell what his name was, and we had a couple other guys. So they sometimes people use the real name, like John L. did, Jason, who signed up recently. So anyway, we thank everybody for doing it. It's a growing community, and we've all become friendly and connecting and stuff, and it's a pretty special thing we're doing. But the bottom line, as you said, as we move on here, yeah, right now we're like 2 days away from this game because there's no bye week for the championship game. You get the bye for in between the Super Bowl. So it's a pretty interesting game, and a game that I never would have predicted, or you wouldn't have predicted to start the season. And
no,
I got to give one guy credit though, Craig Mish, who I do Sports Grid with, very early in the season when Washington got off to a good start. He said, and I told him he's out of his mind. He said, you know what? I think Washington's going to go to the Super Bowl this year. This is like between weeks 3 and 5. I'm like, come on, dude, really? You're not even right. I said, dude, I'm giving you a shout out, man. And Steve Hartman from Fox Sports Radio picked Denver to make the playoffs. Denver had a 5.5 win total from the odds makers. I mean, that's a great call. I don't know what he thought, but anyway,
cool.
Listen, when you get elite quarterback play, Jane Daniels with his feet and his arm, maturity. I know that a lot's been written, said about him. Just talking to Washington about him, people around the team. I mean, there's a saying, you know it when you're around it. When the guy's got the demeanor, no entitlement of being the second pick overall. He's a great dude, and he's put this team on his back. I mean, I know the coaching's been good. They've certainly overachieved. I mean, I don't even know if they thought they would be this good. In fact, I'm sure they didn't. And we'll get into some of the matchups, and we'll also do this in the pregame show over the weekend with Greg Cosell. You look at this roster, you go, they can't. There's no way. But guess what, folks? Ask the Lions what they think of Washington.
Yeah. I mean, listen, ask a lot of teams. Washington has proved that its talent is pretty good. It's not like some bubble gum and popsicle sticks thing going on there. They got good players. Good players have played well. Yeah, I know people had fun with, how many guys would start for that doesn't really matter. I mean, you get elevated play from certain players. That's all it takes in a game to win. So it should be a good game. So Coach Flip said something I wanted to run by you that I thought was really interesting, that I'm really looking forward to in this matchup. And you might have been the one to ask him. Okay. It's basically, when you get to this level, conference championship and then Super Bowl, every team has something. Every team goes in thinking you may have to reach into the bag for something. You have to pull out something that the opponent has not found, because the opponent has really been scouring the tape, especially when you get to the Super Bowl and they've got 2 weeks to scour the tape. So every team goes into it with something there, right? Whether you get to it or not is different, but you at least have it in your bag. And then secondarily, on the opposite end, you got to make sure as a coaching staff that you're not making this game out to be so big, and in your practice habits, in your routine, in the way you call plays, right? That you still have to treat it like the nameless, faceless opponent. You do everything the same. So yes, you prepare for a little bit of a curveball just because that's strategy. They're watching your tape. They're really only focused on everything you've done all year long. So you want to have a few things to hit them that they don't, the unscouted looks. But at the same time, you do not want to abandon who you are. So it'll be interesting to see how the Eagles, who have coached somewhat conservatively here over the last 2 weeks, and who've also had, offensively at least, and who've also have some injuries that we'll get into, to see what they might have in their bag. And then also conversely, Adam, Cliff Kingsbury has done a marvelous job. And Greg Rossell was talking about some air raid stuff he's been seeing from Cliff lately, which is, not something Cliff has done since he's gotten to the NFL too much of. So it'll be very interesting to see which team is the first to unveil its sort of curveball in this game.
Yeah, I mean, look, Vic Fangio's seen everything on defense, man. This guy,
Yeah.
I mean, he was on the Philadelphia Star staff in the mid '80s and his 20s. I mean, that's how long he's been coaching professional football. So the thing is, it's like, what are you going to bring out? You got to be careful because you can't ask your players to do things they're not comfortable with.
Right.
But and there are what the Eagles did in 2017. I know teams would tell me that they'd run a lot of the same plays, but make them look different.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the play earlier was on the right side, they might have run it to the left side and vice versa. So we'll see what happens. It's fascinating. I'm just, like you said earlier, and we'll move on in a minute, is that I'm so glad the weather's not going to be a factor.
Right.
Unless it's going to be like the snow game in Philly, which was pretty awesome to watch. I don't want anything. I just want, like you said earlier, I want a clean game. Now, unfortunately, we'll go inside the injury situation, which is, it's worth for the Eagles. All of a sudden, the damn pop-up injuries. Man, it pissed me off when that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah.
All right. So anyway,
2017, right? It was the flea flicker, which Flip talked about, and there's a side story to that, which was awesome. The flea flicker to Torrey Smith, and then of course in the Super Bowl, the Philly special. And by the way, the Patriots had trickery of their own. They tried that quarterback. They had the play where Brady, the quarterback wheel route, he just dropped it.
Yes, he dropped it.
Right. So,
do you know the memes for that thing are ridiculous?
Oh, yeah. I know, it's fantastic. So we're just telling you guys, listen, this is going to be a big game between two division rivals. Expect the unexpected, because there'll probably be a play or two or three that make you go, wow. And, you just hope your team is on the right side of that wow play.
That's right.
All right. So let's get into some of the we're going to get into transactions, the injury report for both teams, and talk a little bit about some of the line movement and the weather, as we've already gotten into. Transactions, Adam. So the big thing is, and this is going to be an interesting one, the 21-day practice window was open for Britton Covey. So he's out of practice. He's been dealing with this neck injury. He was on IR. He comes off. I have questioned myself or been curious about, would they actually play him in the NFC Championship game after this long layoff? But at the same time, Adam, there's some benefits if in practice they think he can handle it, and you don't have to put you don't have to put DeJean back there. That helps you.
Now, of course, if they activate him this week to play, he's not on the 53. He's on IR, so you have to release somebody.
Right.
So that's always something. Now, the thing though, he's listed as limited, which it's hard to see him being active for this game. We'll see what happens today on Friday if he takes a full practice, and then you start thinking, okay, maybe they'll activate him. But as you said, he's been out for so long. But as we said on the Wednesday morning show, this was the week that he'd be eligible to practice, and they started doing that on Wednesday. And we'll see. They don't have to do this if they get to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe he's closer. He's got to get cleared medically for contact. We talked that was our understanding. Whenever the heck it was, the last time we talked about him, whenever they decided to keep him on IR. So
yeah.
Here's where it got interesting this week. So on the practice squad, and it may be related to Dallas Goedert, who has a new injury. He came out of the game, though he played a lot and looked great. He has a new injury. Now it's an ankle Goddard had an ankle injury earlier this season. We'll talk about that when we get to the injuries. But as we go inside the transactions, I always believe transactions tell you a story. Sometimes it's for the future. If you sign a reserve future contract, reserve future contract means the guy cannot be on your playoff roster, but he will be on your 90-man roster. Whereas Nick Muse, a 2022 seventh-round pick for the Vikings, who only wound up catching one pass in his 3 years with the team, who just got released from the practice squad recently. He signed to the Eagles practice squad. And now this is interesting on Cam Irving, who we mentioned earlier, signed to the Eagles practice squad. Now, you should know that he's played every position. The Browns got to the point with him was they were just trying to get something out of him as a former first-round pick so that he played center, guard, and tackle for them. So Cam Jurgens, pop-up injury, coming out of the game with a back injury. This, I'm sure, had something to do with it because he can play center, Cam Irving. Now, is it his best position? Probably not. I know you mentioned it off the air with me or on Thursday, and I don't disagree with you. Maybe his best position is guard. He was really drafted to be a tackle. It just didn't work out. He's been with a number of teams. Did he not win a Super Bowl with the Chiefs? Am I wrong about that?
I think the first one, I think he did. Yeah.
Okay. I thought he did. But bottom line is he's been around a long time. And he's got positional versatility. This is just he's on the practice squad. And what it is you get him in. He was there Thursday and Friday. They didn't practice Wednesday. They had a walkthrough. See what kind of shape he's in. And if they need to use an elevation on Saturday. And by the way, the deadline for transactions is 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday to elevate or sign anyone off the practice squad. So, yeah, look, the Muse one, because they're light at tight end if Goddard can't play. This is not now. You would rather have someone with more experience in Muse because, again, he was a seventh rounder 2 years ago. He was waived as a rookie on and off the Vikings practice squad for 2 seasons, and then they did not renew him actually to come back. Actually, to be technically right, he was not cut from the practice squad. They just did not re-sign him. They because you could sign guys back to reserve future contract in the offseason. They declined to do so. But the Eagles signed him, and he's from South Carolina, 6'4.5", about 250. Again, you'd rather he's barely played. He only has 1 catch in 3 seasons, so you'd rather get someone else with more experience. But the bottom line is, as we move forward here, this is something to watch at tight end.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about also the practicing, right, without Goddard and with Uzama on tight end, when the Eagles are in. Yeah. I'm sorry, on IR. Yeah, Uzama on IR. When the Eagles are in 12 personnel, it's only now Calcaterra and EJ Jenkins. Well, what happens when they want to practice goal line, 13 personnel? What happens when they want to practice against a scout team, right? And the Commander scout team might 12, 13 personnel at times. You need these bodies for practice. So it does help you with depth and that you hope you never have to get to on game day. And we're not trying to say that this is a bad prognosis for Goddard, even though it's not a good thing that he's out with an ankle injury.
Yep.
But it's hard to make it through your practice throughout the week if you don't have enough tight ends, both for your own team and for the scout team, as you do multiple formations.
Yeah, in fact, Muse now is the only tight end in the practice squad. Now, they do have Carrie Blasingame, who's a fullback. He's back in the practice squad. He was, as of Monday, that's where that's where he reverts to after you were elevated. So yeah, they have a numbers problem at tight end. Even with Goddard, even if he hadn't been healthy, they still need one on the practice squad. As you said, for the look team, or if anyone got hurt in practice, which happens. So yeah, they kind of need it. Now they have plenty of receivers. Kyle Phillips.
Real quick. I just want to ask you, what about the 49ers guy that they signed? Latu what's his?
No. Here's why he's signed a reserve future.
Right. That's what I was going to add. He cannot. Yep. That means he cannot.
Not eligible for playoffs.
Right.
Not even Super Bowl. Cannot play.
Right.
What's that?
I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Reserve future. Yeah. He. Some of the you're allowed to for the playoff. You can sign reserve future contracts. Some playoff teams. I know talking to one of the teams said that they'll deal with that later. They were concentrating solely on any free agents they needed if somebody got hurt. Whereas the Eagles here, they're looking for the future. Cameron Latu was a 3rd rounder for the 49ers, as you said the other day. Another ex-49er. I don't know what is going on with their fascination with former 3rd rounders for the Niners. It's kind of funny. Anyway.
It is crazy. All right. So that's an important note. Yeah. Muse is an important person right now for depth and for practice. And, you hope you don't have to use him in the game, because that would mean that something happened not good for the main players. You were about to say about the wide receivers.
Yeah, now they do have plenty of receivers. That's not the problem.
Right.
Kyle Phillips is a slot receiver, formerly of the Titans out of UCLA. I know the Titans, the new staff didn't like him, but he was drafted by the former general manager, John Robinson. Danny Gray, again, another 49er who could run. I know. Did Andrew do a series on him, or did he interview him for the draft?
So when Andrew was doing Draft Dreams, which is his off-season podcast interviewing college prospects, he did one with Danny Gray, who at the time was coming out of SMU. Yeah. So this before he was even a 49er. So it's kind of it's always fun to do that, and then the guy winds up on the Eagles.
Yep. So and he has limited playing time. So, but the bottom line is, they have some guys at least have played the National Football League. You'd rather have veterans if something happened, but remember now, Paris Campbell, the Eagles actually on their 53 have Brown, Smith, Dotson, Wilson, the blocking receiver, Anaya Smith, who's a slot, and Campbell, who could play 3 different receiver positions. So they're okay. They've got a good enough depth. Right. But I'm just saying on the practice squad, if they had a game where, let's say they make the Super Bowl, but the 2 starters gets hurt, then it becomes a problem. But you obviously can't. Any team would go through that. But you'd like to have a veteran to turn to if needed on the practice squad. But hopefully it won't get anywhere close to that.
Yeah, and I would think, I'm just surmising here based on our years of experience, that trying to get Covey on the field for the NFC Championship game with 1 week for practice may not be.
I don't see it. I'd be
Super Bowl. I wouldn't rule out the Super Bowl though, when you have the extra time, extra preparation, and that might be more realistic for Covey.
Well, and also because of the Goddard situation, because they got the roster tango. Remember now, if you only get 2 elevations for each game, so that becomes problematic if Goddard can't play. Because one of them's got to be that kid Muse. You don't want to make the mistake. So now Cam Irvin could be, because I know he's done it before, as I understand it. He's been an extra lineman, not really. You could call him whatever you want, but I know he's done some of that blocking, like the third tight end. When I remember talking to one of the teams over the years when they had him, he actually was like a third tight end for a brief period,
right,
if needed. So you got to keep an eye on it. The Saturday transactions, by the way, could be very, very telling. We'll see what happens.
Very, along with the Friday practice report. Today's practice report.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a real quick break to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to go into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You'll get a great deal. You get a little merch. You might get a sweatshirt or a zip-up jacket. Adam and Geoff, our name goes very far at Sky Motor Cars. So check out all their great inventory. You can check them out whether you're buying, whether you're trading in, whether you just want to browse and see what the market looks like for cars. They have such a great inventory and a great, friendly staff that will help you in ways that you will not find at other dealerships. So check them out, Sky Motor Cars, or go to their website, skymotorcars.com. All right, Adam, so let's talk about these injuries that, we always talk about the dreaded pop-ups, and unfortunately the Eagles may have to deal with have had to deal with some pop-ups here. Our injury report for the Eagles, sponsored by our friends at Stretch Zone. Who do you want to start with, Adam?
We'll go with the QB1, number 1.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts. So here's the good thing. I mean, it's minor, but the broken left index finger is off the injury report. Okay, that's a positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the second big positive is he took all the starters reps on Thursday. So now I'm cautioning people. That doesn't mean he's going to be able to run like he did last week, where that 44-yard run was very explosive from next-gen stats. We don't know. But I'm very encouraged that we know he's playing. That's not the question. I'm just encouraged that he took all the reps. He wasn't limited on Thursday in terms of taking the full reps. So that's good. That's a positive. And we'll see what happens today. We'll see how he reacts to Thursday's practice. Kenny Pickett is good to go. The broken ribs haven't fully healed, but he's getting better, and he'll be the number 2 quarterback. But let's go to the pop-ups. And then there are a couple of new additions. Cam Jurgens with a back injury. I know some of the reporters said they didn't see him at practice. He could have been getting some treatment on that back. Man, offensive linemen and bad backs or back injuries concern me. So we'll have to take what's that?
I said, I agree. That when I saw that it was back, I was like, I winced a little bit and I said, that's a little concern. If it was like an ankle or an arm or a chest, like you figure it'd be all right. But the back, you hate to see that.
Yeah. So we'll see how this treatment went on Thursday. The reporters did see Landon Dickerson. We talked about this several weeks ago about who would be the backup center. In fact, I remember you and I kind of going through the machinations, if you will, because what it would look like. Because remember the Bucks game, they had a number of injuries and see how they would move guys around and so forth. But Jurgens has actually been very healthy because I know in years past he had injury issues, but not this season. This is the first one that I'm looking at my file here. Let me just double check. I don't think he's been on the injury report before. Cam Jurgens.
I know he just came out of a few games for a few snaps with injuries.
Yes, he had a wrist injury. Didn't miss a game.
Right.
He had a very minor wrist injury. That was it. But so Dickerson, and then it was Tyler Steen, right? Was in at
left guard. Yep.
Left guard. Yes. And Steen is, by the way, seen time at right and left guard. We should note that. So we'll see what happens today with Cam. Here's the bottom line. I do want to explain the way coaches think in the playoffs, as they've explained to me over the years. Talking to coaches over the years in terms of when guys don't practice during the week during the playoffs, they don't care. Like in the regular season, they do. In terms of playing or not, as long as the Eagles, let's say Jurgens doesn't practice today, right? As long as he's not listed as doubtful or out, he's still got a shot. Whereas in the regular season, 9 times out of 10, they don't play if they don't practice. Teams throw that rule out. They don't care in the playoffs. They're trying to win. It's a one-game season. So if Cam is good enough to either get a limited practice in or doesn't today, but is not listed as doubtful or out, I'm not ruling him out. We just mentioned Goddard with his second ankle injury this season. I'm going to give you all of the injuries that he suffered this season, whether it was in-game and not listed during the week. This is his second ankle injury actually listed on the injury report. He had the illness recently, and they also had a hamstring injury earlier this season.
Yep.
He missed games 7 through 9, went on IR on week later than that on week 14. And as you know, he came back late in the season to play against the Giants. He played the same week he came back. He was designated for return. So if he can't play, as we mentioned, it's Calcaterra and then E.J. Jenkins, and they'll make a decision whether it's going to be an extra lineman to be a third tight end or is it going to be Nick Muse, but they have a plan.
Yeah, I would say this, at the time of us recording this, I'm not super concerned yet, but if neither Goddard nor Jurgens practice on Friday, that would be a concern for me. Because even if you told me it's okay, they're going to play, the fact that you couldn't make it to one practice in the week tells me that you're playing hurt. Sure. And this ain't the team that you want to be playing hurt against. They got some dogs up front. I know they're not good at stopping the run, but listen, we all had eyes. You could see Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner are aggressive players, are tough players, are good players. And that front with Payne and Allen and of course Newton, they got better as the season gone on. So I'd be concerned.
Yep. And then we had a pop-up with Lane Johnson. He took all the starters reps. He'll start. A.J. Brown, great sign. He took all the starters reps on Thursday. Obviously, he's going to play. That was not a question. It was just a matter of, is his knee getting better? He said it, and he proved it on Thursday. I love it that he did. Let's just hope if Hurts' knee feels good enough, they can get that deep passing game going, because A.J. had that drop. The pass is right in his hands. I don't want to hear it about, it wasn't a perfect pass. Who cares? The ball was in his damn hands. He's got to catch it. So
yeah.
People are some people who just don't like Hurts. Our job here is to educate. No matter who works for us, we go, this is what the tape looked like. Okay. So you can't really argue against tape. The eye in the sky doesn't lie, but the pass is right in his hands. It was a good pass.
Right.
Okay. You got to catch that pass. I know AJ had a good season in terms of not dropping the football, and then the one over the middle, I mean, he would have got killed if he would have gotten it. Let's be honest about it. But so Lane is fine. Lane's going to start. Defensively, Sweaty, he's got a new one. It's an ankle. He took all the starters reps. He'll play, but this is great. Quinyon, we were never concerned about him playing, and he said he was playing. I was only going to be concerned if he didn't take any reps on Thursday, but he took all the starters reps. He's good to go. He said it.
Great sign.
Good for him. Great.
Yeah. All right. So those are the Eagles injuries presented by our friends at Stretch Zone. You can get a free, did I say free? Yeah, I said free 30-minute stretch at go in and sign up at stretchzone.com, or you can even go in person. In fact, Adam, I believe there are 3 ways that you can do this.
Yeah, the way I do it is I do it through the portal. Usually, like if I'm at a stoplight, it literally takes 15 seconds, before the light changes, of course, because you don't want to type when you're driving. So if I'm in the parking lot or I'm at a stoplight, I just go to the portal and I just pick the day and the time and whoever I want to have me stretch, and that's it. Oh, one thing I'll add, we haven't talked about this. So they give if you have to cancel for any reason, you have before 12 hours before your appointment. Now, if let's say you have to cancel 2 hours before, just call them, let them know, hey, something came up. They're very good about it. I've done it. I know other people do it. They've always told me, as long as you give us a heads up, they're generally very understanding. Not like if you do it 5 minutes before, that's not cool, but because the practitioners don't get paid if you don't, they have however they get paid. So you want them to get paid, of course. So you want to be good to them. But look, bottom line is 12 locations. We've talked about it a ton of times. It's very convenient. Chester County, Haverford, we've talked about them near Suburban Square. Devon, near the Whole Foods. I've been there a lot. Exton, I love the guys at Exton. Austin, Nick, Emily, and Madison. I know Sam's coming back. I heard Samantha's coming back. Very cool. Nice. In the Whiteland Town Center, South Philly, near Graduate Hospital, in 25th and Washington Ave. One of these is see Dave Spadaro of the Eagles. He goes in there. I know that. Maybe he'll sign autographs. Montgomery County in Elkins Park Square, Upper Dublin and Dresher in the Promenade at Upper Dublin off 611, Feasterville, Lower Southampton Village. One of these days I got to get to that one. And the Upper Dublin one I know is actually a good area. I know there's a good pizza joint near there. New Jersey, where you go, in Cherry Hill and Evesham Road, Mount Laurel, Sennington Square, Wegmans, Franklin Lakes on Franklin Ave, Northfield on Tilton Road, and Princeton and National Park Pavilion. That's it. StretchZone.com. It's very easy. And after the Eagles are out of the playoffs, actually after the Super Bowl, right? We're getting Cosell to go in there because he brags about how good of an athlete he is. But he doesn't get the stretching part. He's got to get that, and he'll even be better.
My favorite thing for our Patreon members have seen it when he does Ask Greg Cosell now. He's got this little mini basketball in his hand the whole time. He's palming as he's going through the tape and talking about, double mug looks, and he's got this basketball in his hand and he's palming it, and he's just trying to rub it in that he was this great city basketball player back then.
By the way, on what you just said, but I will tell you from sitting in his office for like a decade, he's got this picture, and now of course he's wearing those like vinyl shorts from like 1963, but the Daisy Dukes, the original Daisy Dukes. But man, his jump shot is like perfect the way it's formed.
Oh yeah, you got that pristine release.
Yeah, he did, and he said he was an all-city shortstop. You look at him, I go, "How are you so athletic?" Or "How were you athletic?" But I would like to see tape of that. See, I need to see it first before I believe it. But anyway,
we need to do a special inside the tape of Greg Cosell.
Yeah, I wonder if he has anything. Maybe he has something on tape. Anyway,
all right, so let's get into the Commanders' injuries because they're generally a healthy team, Adam. I mean, they have one big injury from last game that we talked about. It's their best offensive lineman. He tore his ACL. Sam Cosmi, the right guard. So he's obviously not going to be able to play, and we'll see what happens for next year. His replacement is the veteran guard tackle, Trent Scott, who I believe has played this year some, right? I mean, he's had to play a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. He, my understanding is they're going to go with him. He's a right. The way it's explained to me by someone who coached him a couple years ago. I can't remember which stop it was. He's been with like Pittsburgh, Carolina, now Washington. It might be another team, but he's played left tackle before, but teams don't see him that way. They see him as a right tackle guard. Did a yeoman's job filling in. Man, it's hard. Sudden change when you kind of come off the bench.
Yeah,
they did not give up a sack to Detroit with all that blitzing. That's this line. I look at this line. I don't know how the hell they're doing it. See, I feel like the Eagles, and I know we'll talk more about this with Greg in the preview over the weekend, but I just can't see and we'll see how Trent Scott does. But with this line, the way that they're playing, I know Vic doesn't like the blitz. He probably won't.
Oh, why would you? Hey, you got to have Jalen Carter lined up against Trent Scott.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I got to think they're going to win that matchup. Now, but I do want to mention, I want to add this. Deron Payne, now he's been playing with, as I understand it, a dislocated right thumb. That's not the problem. He has a new knee injury he came out of the game with. He didn't work on Thursday. So now you mentioned Johnny Newton, who would start, obviously, who did very well in the Eagles' first matchup. Let's see what happens today. And by the way, Jonathan Allen playing with that partial pectoral tear. So that's a problem. Keep an eye on that, folks. This is a little surprising. So let's see what happens today.
You know the famous Bill Parcells quote about football players in general just not being well-adjusted people?
Well, he actually said about coaches, but go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, that coaches too. Yeah. I mean, the fact that, you can have a dislocated thumb and that's really not the thing that bothers you the most.
Well, it's funny because I think he put the picture of it on Twitter. Maybe the X-ray or something. But anyway, yeah, I know but you got to be able to grab. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know. And then they got another guy playing through a partially torn pec or coming back. I mean, you really got to be off your rocker to play football, man.
They love it. You know what I love about it? Both signed big contract extensions, but they love football so much, and they love their teammates and their team, and they're playing for each other. That's cool, though, that you mentioned that, because I don't know what exactly Payne's knee injury is, but the fact that John Allen came back, I mean, 30-year-old veteran. You know what I think, and I don't know that. Actually, I met him at ESPN when he was for the draft, but I don't know the guy. But I got to think he suffers so much crap with that football team.
Yep. I feel for him and for him and Payne to come from Alabama, where you do nothing but win, and then you go play for that franchise, and you're good enough to sign your extension, but it's Drek, and those are really the two guys that stand out, because almost everybody else, and maybe the punter,
Terry McLaurin, of course.
And Terry, but Terry Tress Way, the punter, has been there forever.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Because almost everybody else has been brought in from somewhere this year, whether it's like Chin or Wagner or Lulu or Lattimore. I mean, you can go on and on and on and on. Like most of their offensive line, like a lot of their players are not or Washington guys. So it's good for those guys to finally see what it's like.
Last couple of years. By the way, they do expect, barring something unforeseen, Bobby Wagner will play. He's had this ankle injury for a couple of weeks, so they don't seem to be concerned about it. So what they did is they just kept him off his feet for the last 2 days, but now, if he didn't play, that's a different story. Luvu's got a minor injury. They do expect him to play, as I understand it. So we'll keep an eye. The Friday injury report, this one has never been more important for both teams. My goodness gracious, there's a lot going on.
True. All right. And so for the gamblers among us, I'm sure it'll be very interesting to see, like you said, the Friday injury report, and if that or anything else changes how the line looks. The Eagles opened at 4.5. with an over-under of 48.5. But then, despite the fact that you heard about, Jalen Hurts' injury and Quinyon Minzel's injury and then the pop-up ones, the Eagles are 6-point favorites at the time of us recording this. Now, the over-under went down a little bit to 47.5. This is all courtesy of our friends at DraftKings. But the line went up to 6. I wonder if it stays at 6 based on, again, the final injury report and any kind of transactions that might reflect things. It'll be interesting to see how this one officially closes.
All right. So, and remember, it's gone up a 1.5, which means obviously the money's on the Eagles, so they had to move it because they want to balance it out. That's how it works. So, I'm thinking if you don't think it would go to 6.5 or 7, do you?
I think depending on who gets ruled out, like if let's say they rule out, let's say Goddard or Jurgens or both are ruled out, I could see it. Oh no, I'm sorry. You asked me if it could get to 6 or no. I don't think it could get higher.
Yeah, I don't either.
I could see it going the other way.
Yeah, in fact, we'll talk more about this Saturday, but I put out my picks for the championship games on SportsGrid on Thursday, so it's already out there if you were watching, but. I think it's overinflated. Now, I know some people a lot of Eagles fans will not give Washington credit. They just refuse to. I get it. I said it earlier. They've overachieved. I don't think clearly the Eagles are more talented. They're a better football team, but momentum and health matters. What the coaching staff for Washington's done a phenomenal job. I just talk about squeezing the orange, man. Like they're getting every ounce of anything out of it. But bottom line, as we move on here, it's 6:47.5. We'll see what happens with the injury reports later today.
All right. Hey, listen, we're going to break this thing down even more as we always do with Greg Cosell for Inside the Birds pregame show. And that'll be out. People have enjoyed it a little earlier than expected. It'll be out over the weekend. We'll have it up before Sunday morning. And then a lot more coverage as we roll into the NFC Championship and perhaps yet another trip to the Super Bowl. For ITB, it would be our second Super Bowl as well.
That's right.
In the last.
By the way, I was just going to ask you what. Someone asked me this question. It was such a great question. I didn't even know. I said I needed more time to think about it.
Oh, good. So now you're going to ask me and put me on the spot.
Well, no, I'm just curious. I'm very curious what your response would be.
Okay.
Because both teams in the AFC have major Eagle ties. Sean McDermott, of course, and Andy Reid.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? You think people are over to the Chiefs? They had a nut. You're like, do you think? What would you rather have? Just from an interest standpoint, one,
Mm-hmm.
and B, from a matchup standpoint. I'm just curious how you would react to that question.
So I think the answer would be the same for the Chiefs. And I listen. I have
really.
I still talk to Sean every once in a while.
Okay.
McDermott. So I root for him. I really would love to see him win a Super Bowl at some point. But you're asking me from a matchup standpoint. I don't think that there's anything that's cooler than like rematches in a Super Bowl, right? Like the opportunity to get Eagles Chiefs Part 2, second time in 3 years, would be pretty darn cool.
Sure.
So, and then your first question is in general,
like viewership, listenership, interest standpoint.
Yeah, so I'm starting to sense some Chiefs fatigue, mainly because of the referees.
Oh, yeah.
That people are really tired of how the refs have favored. And listen, I'm not a blame the ref person, but you cannot deny that a lot of their games they've gotten some very favorable calls. That's especially on.
But
prime
then
I know there's a stat that said they get less than others. Fine, but like it's not even the number of calls; it's when the call is made. And obviously last week you can't dance around like that, get hit, and then blame the defender the way Patrick Mahomes, and now he's flopping. So, but anyway, I don't sense the same hatred for a Chiefs dynasty that you saw for the Patriots, because the Patriots had a feeding scandal. Belichick has not missed a personality. Brady started to get on people's nerves with the pretty boy stuff and the dating the supermodel. I haven't seen that yet. I don't think people dislike the Chiefs, but the referees are starting to make them go in that direction. So I get that.
See that Will Anderson play.
That to me is going to get called sometimes, and it's not. Like I may say it's not really.
It's so funny you said that, because that's what I was going to say. Because depending on which former referee who's speaking to the media gives that information out, what you just mentioned, if you lower your head, initiate contact, it's a flag. Period. End of story. That was very questionable. In fact, Russell York said it shouldn't have been a penalty.
Right.
Then some other former guys who were saying it should have been. But the competition committee's got to clear this stuff up.
Yep.
At some point, a guy makes a great play. Remember the stupid body weight foul?
Yes.
Which rarely gets called anymore because guys are aware of it. It took a long time for guys to. If you flatten a quarterback, I mean, how well could you move away? Sometimes it should have been called. They don't call it. But you mentioned the most salient point here. Consistency. In the NBA, the players want it. Coaches and players want it, in particular in the National Football League. And that's the one thing that's eluding. As great as they are, as highly graded as they are, high 90 percentile in terms of letter of the law and the rule. But the rest want to know what's a penalty and what's not. And they want it to be called the same every single time. It's next to impossible to do that. I don't know why, but it seems to be.
Yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully the games are officiated cleanly. The last thing you want is either of these games this weekend where the dominant storyline is, I can't believe they called that on the final, kind of like the Bradbury thing. But like, I don't think the refs decided that Super Bowl either. But the last thing you want is someone thinking a game was lost but rehanded to a winning team because of a really bad penalty call. So
True.
that's what I root for as an objective analyst. Let the players play it out, and hopefully that's the case.
There you go.
All right, that's going to do it for the good question, by the way. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.